Good morning, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Classic Live Album War. Today we're going to look at two massive sets. One released in 1971, a quadruple live album, from an American band. Also, on the other end of the ring, also an American band who released this live album first in Japan in 1974. Then they released it a year later in Europe, 1975. It never got its full official release here in the States until 1991, which is very strange considering how good the live album is. It's strange that they waited that long. That was a triple album, So first, we've got Chicago live at Carnegie Hall. I mean, look at this massive CD set. If you had the original LP, of course, quadruple. I mean, I've seen, a buddy of mine has the original Chicago live at Carnegie Hall, or Chicago 4 as it's also known as, quadruple live LP set, and it's just ridiculous. All of Chicago's early albums were like double, triple sets and what have you, and you fold out posters and all sorts of fun things, right? On the other end of the ring, we've got Lotus from Santana. Triple album set, recorded right around the time of their Caravanserai album, which is their fourth LP. Kind of a band in transition at the time. They had their classic lineup. People started leaving, and they started becoming much more of almost like a jazz fusion type of band. With lots of different lineup changes and things like that. But let's tackle one at a time. So here we have Chicago live at Carnegie Hall. This comes on the heels of the Chicago Transit Authority's album, double album. Chicago, or Chicago 2 as it's commonly called, double album. And Chicago 3, double album, right? So why not go all out, release a live album, play a gig at Carnegie Hall in New York City, and release it as a quadruple set? So, this is just jam-packed with so many of those early classics from those first three albums, and in many cases stretched out to epic lengths. This is a lot of jamming, a lot of cool improv, and just this is a band that, man, if you haven't listened to early Chicago and all you know is those kind of, schmaltzy 80s pop and ballad hits, man, you are completely missing out, man. They were a fiery force to be reckoned with early in their career, man, incorporating rock and jazz and blues and pop and, dare I say, a little bit of prog rock, right? So here, on the CD version, we've got 4 discs, but of course the original album was 8 sides of vinyl, so 4 actual LPs, right? So what do we have here? In the Country, Fancy Colors, Does Anybody Really Know What Time It Is? Stretched Out, South California Purples, ripping version of that. Terry Kath on guitar all over this album, just slaying. Question 67 and 68, another really accessible rock tune from the band early on. Sing a Mean Tune Kid, all right? Another great tune. And then, of course, Beginnings, which ends the first disc here. Then on disc 2, you got the Better End Soon movement, of course, from Chicago's second album. Great stuff. The horn section, the woodwinds. It's just real complex time signatures and just amazing pieces of songwriting. These guys were just kind of ahead of their time, really. Then you got Introduction, incredible. Mother, Lowdown, Flight 602, Motorboat to Mars, Free. Where do we go from here? And I Don't Want Your Money, which has got some pretty bruising Terry Kath guitar orama. Disc 3, Happy 'Cause I'm Going Home. And then you've got the excellent Ballet for a Girl in Buchanan. Sweet, also from Chicago's second album, which of course includes Make Me Smile, So Much to Say, So Much to Give, Anxiety's Moment, West Virginia Fantasies, Color My World, very popular song, To Be Free, Now More Than Ever. Then we've got A Song for Richard and His Friends, 25 or 6 to 4, Terry's signature kind of guitar spotlight, right? A big hit for the band. And then their amazing rendition of I'm a Man, which, for me, I've said it before, better than the original by the Spencer Davis Group. Over on disc 4, you got Listen, Introduction, South California Purples. These are all bonus selections. Freeform Intro, Sing a Mean Tune Kid, and then An Hour in the Shower, which is another long kind of movement from the band from their third album. Okay, so these are some additional recordings, then 25 or 6 to 4. But those first 3 discs here on the CD make up those 4 albums, the original 4 album set. And of course, if you get the CD, they try to recreate as best they can the original LP. You got the little mini sleeves here. You got the booklets, jam-packed with stuff, posters, all sorts of fun stuff. This is a great CD set. It was an amazing album too, right? So over on the other end of the ring, we've got Lotus by Santana. Like I mentioned before, this is Santana after their initial, first 3 albums, okay, with that classic band. Then they released the Caravanserai album, which, like I said, pretty much a jazz fusion album. That saw like Carlos and the remaining members of the band who were still around kind of experimenting in lots of jazzy waters, a little bit of psychedelia, a lot of kind of Latin rhythms and things like that. Like they didn't already have enough, going deeper, even some African rhythms and things like that. So here, remember, original triple LP set, originally just released in Japan, but then of course, Santana was a big band at the time, so you got to get that released all over the world. Again, why we never had it here in the U.S., only as an import until the early 90s, your guess is as good as mine. But on disc 1 here on the CD, which is a 2-disc set, we've got Going Down, A1 Funk. A lot of funk on this album. All right? Every Step of the Way. Lengthy. A lot of jamming. You got Tom Coster on keyboards here replacing Greg Raleigh, so a lot of synths coming into the band. All right, Carlos's guitar is like searching out all over the stratosphere on here. Black Magic Woman, Gypsy Queen, Oye Como Va, got to have the hits in here. Yours is the Light, Batuka, Zibaba, Stoneflower, Waiting, Castillos de Arena, Part 1, Free Angela, and Samba de Salsalito, okay, over on disc 2. You've got Mantra, very cool, mostly instrumental tune. Kyoto, lengthy, near 10-minute tune. Castillos de Arena, Part 2, okay? Incident in Neshabar, it's about 16 minutes. All right? A lot of fiery jams on that. Se Acabó, Samba Pati, almost 9-minute long. Carlos Extravaganza. Mr. Udo, of course, as many of you might know, Mr. Udo is actually the promoter over in Japan who brought a lot of these bands from North America and Europe over into Japan. Okay, he was like the very famous guy that all the bands knew him. And then ending it all off, one of my favorite tracks on this entire set is, and I'm sure I'm going to pronounce it right, but Toussaint L'Ouverture. Okay, another great jam here. A lot of good jams on this album. A lot of good jams. Both of these albums are full of, improvs and jamming and just all sorts of, instrumental freakouts and what have you. My one gripe with this album is I really missed the lead vocals of Greg Raleigh. They actually, let me just kind of pull the booklet out because probably easier for me to just go on the page I've got open. But, Greg was no longer in the band at this time because he had moved on to, get ready for Journey. And on vocals here, we've got, bear with me a second here, fellas and ladies, Leon Thomas, okay, on vocals and maracas. And my opinion, he just doesn't really quite cut the mustard. I think that's probably the only weak point of this album are the vocals. Thankfully, the majority of the album is all sprawling jams and instrumentals and what have you. But, you really, when you listen to this album, as great as it is, you miss those vocals of Greg Raleigh. Okay, that's really the only thing I can say negative about the album, but the performances are just absolutely blistering. For some people, this album is a little bit too out there, and they may prefer the Moonflower album, which came out a few years later, which is also a very fine live album, but very different than this. Okay, this captures Santana at the height of their kind of fusion-y period, all right, where they were kind of accepting all those influences from those jazz and jazz fusion band, like Miles Davis and Mahavishnu Orchestra, Tony Williams' Lifetime, all that kind of stuff, Herbie Hancock, right? So it was coming out in the music of Santana because Carlos, buddies with John McLaughlin, all right? So very influential to the Santana band at this time. So for me, again, not that it matters because while this show is called Classic Live Album War, we're not putting a lot of emphasis on who's winning, who's losing, because these are both great albums and it's just an excuse to talk about them, right? But as always, I'm going to give you a little input on which one I prefer and why. So for me, I prefer the Chicago album just a little bit more because I think, again, like I mentioned, the vocals for me have never really just... But instrumentally, this is a great album. But I just think this is just a snapshot of a band at the absolute height of their powers. And, for some, both of these albums are going to be a little sprawling and kind of meandering. And, you have to be in the right frame of mind to put on either of these because there's so much jamming, there's so much improvisation. The songs are stretched out by miles, right? So if you're someone who just wants to hear the songs as they were on the albums, the recorded versions, the studio versions, well, you're not going to get them at all here. All right. So, but both bands really, really firing on all cylinders from a musical perspective. But I just think this is a tighter album, and it just shows a supreme band in their prime. Some folks might like the Live in Japan album that Chicago put out shortly thereafter this a little bit better. I like them both. They're both a little different for me. But this, here, they're basically kind of like a jazz band, right? Right, with plenty of rock firepower. But you can't go wrong with either. Like I said, there's no right or wrong answer here. I prefer Chicago. I'm going to give them a unanimous decision. 117, 110, 116, 112. 115, 114. They're going to edge out in a kind of close, but not so close fight over the course of 12 rounds. They're going to edge out Santana for me. But like I said, I love both of these. I prefer one over the other just a little bit, but your mileage may vary. You may like the Santana album better, and that's totally cool because you can't go wrong with either or. This is just an excuse to talk about two very, very good, two very great albums. So I'm sure we're going to see plenty of debate over, who likes what, why they like the one they like, or, a lot of folks who maybe just, they like them both exactly the same, and that's totally cool too. But even if you do like them both the same, tell us why you dig these albums so much. That's really the point and the heart of these type of shows, is just to talk about these albums and why we love them so much. Okay, what's so great about these two albums? We want to hear it. Right? It doesn't matter. There's no winners or losers here, right? That's just a little side thing we do on this show, right? We kind of do a little boxing analogy here. But there's, like I said, there's no real war here. There's no winners or losers. It's just, let's talk about these two albums, all right? The only time we see winners or losers is on our Facebook poll, right? Because we put them up, in a poll to see who prefers one over the other. But again, no losers. Even if, Chicago runs away with it or Santana runs away with the poll, it doesn't really matter, right? It's just an excuse to get us talking about these wonderful albums and, again, why we love them so much. But, of course, the ultimate goal on these Classic Album War shows, based on the polls on the Facebook page, we're going to pick from each little war. We're going to pick whoever wins, okay? So once the poll is ended, 6 days, every 6 days, we're going to take each winner from all these live album wars we're going to be doing for the next month plus, okay, and we're going to pit those against each other, ultimately coming up with what is voted on by all of you guys as your favorite classic live album of all time. What's it going to be? Allman Brothers Live at the Fillmore, Stones Get Your Ya-Ya's Out, Judas Priest Unleashed in the East, Kiss Alive, Deep Purple Made in Japan, Chicago Live at Carnegie Hall, Santana, Lotus, who the hell knows? We'll kind of see where it all takes us. We probably won't know till the end of the year. My guess is that this would be a great way to kind of cap off 2019 with everyone's favorite live album of all time. But we'll see how long it takes. It may not take that long. We'll see. My guess is it might. So anyway, visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. Go vote for your favorite of these two. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube every day. Stay tuned. Momentarily, we've got questions and answers coming up. And then look for Classic Album War shows coming up all this week. Like I mentioned previous episode, I'm going to be doing a bit of traveling for my day job, for work, for the next 3 weeks, next month basically. So there's days I'm not going to be around. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taping a lot of these shows, these Classic Album War shows, ahead of time. Okay, and just kind of putting them out there. So there may be days you don't see any programming on the channel. That just means if I release 2 or 3 classic live album war shows in one day. That means that's probably the day that I'm getting ready to leave on my business trip. So you'll get like 3 videos that day if I'm going to be out away for 3 days. You'll get 2 videos on one day if I'm going to be away for 2 days, so on and so forth. I think you get the picture. So stay tuned for all that stuff. So that's the next couple of weeks, guys, and we'll see you real soon. Chris Allo and I are hopefully getting together later this coming week. Once I get back from my trip, we're going to be recording a bunch of these classic live album wars, all right? I've got a whole bunch picked out just for he and I that I think will be really, really good. I think you guys will enjoy them. So stay tuned for all that stuff coming at you, all right? Take care. Bye-bye.